Hello and welcome to the Overland Journal podcast. My name is Ashley Giordano. I'm the senior editor of Overland Journal and Expedition Portal. And today we're doing a podcast from the field in beautiful and cold Alberta in the Rocky Mountains with Ferenc and Evelin from Overland site. Welcome, you guys. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having us here.
Thanks for having us.
And a special thanks to Terran Designs for supporting this week's podcast. When you're buying the best for your rig, you might as well do the same for your wardrobe. Terran is the best outdoor apparel on the market and the sharpest looking as well. From their flagship lightweight traveler pants with built-in bug repellency to their innovative fire-resistant campfire puffy, you can pack lighter, stay fresh longer, and push the boundaries on adventure. Build your kit today at terrandesigns.com. That's TEREN designs.com, because you no longer have to look like you live out your vehicle when you actually live out of your vehicle. Thanks again, Terran.
Yeah.
So excited.
Yay!
Yeah, as I mentioned yesterday, we were feeling like meeting celebrities. We were like
No!
overlanding legends.
Nonsense. I feel that way too, actually, because you guys you've seen a lot of things and gone to a lot of places all over the world. Just tell me how you got into overlanding. What was the beginning of it all?
Okay, well, I guess it started with me.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was always into cars when I was a kid. I loved cars, and then I got into traveling in my 20s, I guess. So this is combining the two. And when with two of my friends, we decided to enter the Mongolia charity rally. We bought a pickup truck on eBay, and then we just left from London, heading to Mongolia. And long story short, we didn't make it to Mongolia with the truck. We made it to Mongolia without the truck. By the time we got to Tajikistan, I really kind of fell in love with the whole thing. And I love the fact that I'm with my mates. We're going camping. We don't know where we're going to sleep. And we're off-roading. We're going through these sand dunes in Turkmenistan and meeting people that we would never meet as a tourist in a regular sense of the world, meaning of the world. Yeah, after that trip, we met. And apparently that's all I was talking about.
Yeah, exactly. He kept talking about this Mongolian rally that he did with his two friends, and it took...
One of the friends is named Ashley.
Yeah. The whole trip was 5 weeks for them, and I was thinking about, oh my God, how can you sit in a car for 5 weeks? I need to, get out and do exercises and workouts and everything, and they just constantly driving on the road, and friends just told me, I cannot imagine how cool it is to follow just some tracks in the grass in Mongolia, and we should do that someday. He kept talking about this dream, and we decided to quit our job in 2017, so we did. And we also bought a rooftop tent for our...
But first so when we met, we didn't have our Prado.
Yeah.
But when we were going to buy a car, we needed a car. So I'm like, okay, what can we buy that's going to be good for a future trip? We didn't have any plans at that point. Just okay, I know that at some point we're going to do this. And so what is the car that I can drive every day? I can turn it into an Overland. And that's when we bought the Prado. And then a couple of years or maybe a year later, we let's buy a rooftop tent.
Yeah,
that's how it started.
So in 2016, we bought the Prado. And in 2017, we decided to quit our job. We did in October, and I did in October, first did in December. And we bought a rooftop tent, and we went to Scandinavia for 2 weeks just to test how am I feeling.
But that was before quitting the jobs, actually, in the summer, like a test trip kind of thing.
Yeah, that was a test trip, because before that, I have never slept in a tent.
Not even a ground tent.
Yeah, not even in a ground tent.
What was that experience like?
I mean, it was so comfortable because that rooftop tent was quite big with a sponge inside. It was so thick.
Like a mattress.
A mattress, but basically it was a sponge. But
A spongy mattress.
Yeah, exactly. So that was really comfortable for me. And also the weather was really good. And first we camped in proper campsites. So we didn't do any wild camp in Scandinavia. I really enjoyed that trip. And on the way back, we just decided to go to Africa because we saw an advertisement or sort of like an advertisement on Facebook that an amateur rally from Budapest is going to Gambia. So we just decided, okay, let's do another test drive before we do the Singaporean trip.
Gotcha. And you are both originally from Hungary.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
And did you buy the Prado there or somewhere else?
Yeah, in Hungary. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right, like it was like 9 years old, perfect condition, first owner, was really good. And then I actually wanted to do upgrades before we went to Africa. So I got some gear already. I bought the anger fridge, I bought the rooftop tent. We got a few bits and pieces, camping stuff. But then I knew if we want to go to Singapore over 6 months or 7 months or however long it was, and then also through the Sahara Desert and everything, I want more than a stock truck. We brought it to a place in Austria where they just done all the work. And it's got a Australian suspension system now. It's got the snorkel, it's got the roof rack, it's got the just the usual stuff. And we built a drawer system in the back with my dad, just a DIY. We didn't want to buy an off-the-shelf one. We built, not bought kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we built that. Actually, we built two versions. We built one for Africa, and then we decided that was good. That trip was actually good. That's why we call it like a test trip. It turned out to be a proper difficult trip, actually, because we thought, oh yeah, a month and a half in Africa. Let's try our equipment and then see if that's going to work for us driving from Europe to Singapore. It turned out to be not just a test trip. It was actually quite difficult. But then we learned a lot. We learned how to drive on sand dunes. We learned how to go through a river. We learned quite a bit.
And which countries in Africa did you go to during that trip?
So Morocco, Western Sahara, Mauritania, Senegal, and Gambia.
And then on the way back, of course, as well.
Yeah, 5 countries in total, yeah. But before that, we haven't done any overlanding trip, or I haven't done before any overlanding
At least
trip,
not like this.
Yeah. So it was a good test drive.
So you used the Prado for your daily driver as well as an overland vehicle.
Yep.
What benefits did it have for both? Like, how did that work together for both things?
Well, first of all, we live in the middle of the city, so we were owning other cars as well. So I couldn't possibly justify another 2 cars. So we just had the one, and we had to make a compromise, I guess. It was big enough for an Overlander. We could even sleep inside. And the fact that it's not like a roof conversion, there is no pop top, there is no permanent changes in the truck other than the suspension and the snorkel. The sleeping platform inside, or obviously the rooftop tent, can be taken out. The sleeping platform could be taken out. So once we got home, I could unbolt all these things, boxes from the roof and the rooftop tent, and then it suddenly was a normal car. Okay, it looked a lot better than a normal car because it was lifted and chunky tires and everything, but still, it was a good daily driver still.
Okay, so you did this trip to Africa. What did you take away from that trip? Like, what did you learn in terms of about yourself or about Africa or the world that you didn't know going into the trip?
So I learned that we are so lucky just in general to live in a very developed country in the middle of Europe. So because with so many Africans dealing with water problems or any kind of problems, food problems and everything, we could easily cross any border with our European passports, and the African people couldn't. So they were just, gathering at the border. They tried to cross the border and they couldn't. So at that time, I just realized how lucky I am that I born in Hungary and I have the European passport, and also that we can have access to water, drinking water, for example. So it just taught me that how lucky we are just in general, and we don't have to, always say that,
complain about
everything. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you guys are so funny. You were telling me last night about Hungarians.
Just complain.
Yeah,
all the time.
It's a Hungarian habit, actually. Yeah, sorry to say that, but that's true.
If any Hungarians are listening, I don't care what you think. It's true. It's true.
Let's just be honest, yeah.
No, but we, on a smaller scale of things, we also learned that we get cold very easily because we slept in a rooftop tent. It had ice outside and just frozen, and we were cold a lot in Africa, which was shocking.
Right.
Yeah, but it was January, to be fair. January, February, going through the Atlas Mountains. Still, we thought it's going to be warmer than it was. Also, another thing, I have to admit that one of the factors why we went with this organized rally, which I would never do again, not with that kind of organization, at least. Not don't have any issues with the organization. With that organization, I just wouldn't go with 150 cars again, because that's how big it was. And it was a rushed trip, and it was too fast for, I think we travel faster than regular overlanders anyway, but it's not like we want to drive 20 hours a day. So it was a bit overwhelming. It was a lot of driving and a lot of distance and a lot of, I would say, chaos in like trying to get from A to B. Anyway, so I wouldn't do that again. But one of the reasons why we signed up to that rally was because we'd never been to Africa, and we were like, okay, Northwest Africa, we don't know how it is there. Let's go with other people. And this sounds fun. So let's do that. When we plan a trip like, let's say this one, and we are going to go to South America or Mexico or places like that, and obviously our friends and family are asking us, how come you're going there? It's so dangerous, and like you're going to get killed. Those kind of comments that many people get when they plan trips to these countries. I'm kind of getting upset when I get those questions. I'm like, why do you think that you've never been there? You just hear the news and you think it's bad and people shoot that there's a lot of killings and whatever. But I was the same kind in a way when I planned my trip we planned our trip to Africa. Like we were more comfortable to go with other people than alone. And we would have been fine, of course.
Right.
So
yeah, because on the way back we didn't have any issues, because on the way back we were alone or almost alone. And
yeah, it was fine, of course.
Yeah. And you guys, was it 2 weeks from Hungary down to...
It was about 16 days from Hungary to the Gambia. So it's a lot of distance, like 8,000 kilometers or something. And then on the way back, we took our time and then stopped in places where we wanted to. But otherwise, it's because it's a kind of that rally we're talking about, it's kind of a challenge to do. So you got to be there. Your truck has to be able to do it. You have to be able to do it. The advantage of doing that rally was that we got to places we wouldn't be going, because it went through some really sketchy areas actually, where the military was guarding the camp, because it would have been a target. Too many people from Europe in one place in the desert, apparently, would have been a target. So we went far into the Sahara Desert as well in Mauritania, so we wouldn't have done it alone. So things for those kind of things, it was a very good experience, and we met fantastic people on the trip.
Nice. How would you prepare for another rally if you're going to do one versus a longer-term overland trip?
I wouldn't do a rally, that's the thing.
For so those folks out there that want to do a rally, let's say.
Okay. All right. Actually, there was a guy from California who's done the same trip, Mark. There's a lot of things to consider, because you either buy, because it starts in Europe, in Hungary, but obviously once you're in Europe, you can buy the truck or the car that you want anywhere in Europe, and then just use those plates and drive to Africa, sell it there if you want, or drive it back to Europe and sell it then. But then what Mark's done, he weighed the pros and cons of buying it locally in California, upgrade the truck in a way that he wanted to, buy everything, test it, go on to a four-wheel drive driving course, things, so he could do that with his own truck. And then he shipped it, and then used the truck, sold it, or actually he gave it away in Africa to a charity. One thing is the vehicle to consider. The second thing is whether you want to go to the other side of the planet and do a rally like this, or you want to do something like the Baja rallies. I'm sure there is rallies in Africa like that, or in Asia as well like that. But it's fun because you meet a lot of like-minded people in a very short period of time. So if you don't have time for like a 6-month overland trip on your own, then these tend to be much shorter, because most people doing this specific rally were on just a yearly vacation for 2 weeks, because then you can do it, that you can fit it in. So I guess that's another advantage of it.
Mm-hmm. And lot of the rallies, the purpose of it is to leave a vehicle behind. A lot of it
would be, like the charity rally that I've attempted to do in 2014, and we didn't make it there. But yeah, that was the same kind of idea. Although, for example, compared to this rally to that one, is like one of like the African one was to all 150 cars going almost with the same pace every day, checking in like every stage kind of thing, although there's different categories you might not need to check in, but there's like the rally was going as a group together, whereas with the London to Mongolia charity rally was like you leave on one specific day if you want together, and there's like a ceremony, and then you arrive in Ulaanbaatar whenever you want. So you take as long as you want any route you want. Whereas the African rally was like a set route.
What were the names of those rallies you participated in?
So the African was the Budapest-Bamako rally, and the London to Mongolia was the Mongolia charity rally. Because there's the Mongol rally, but that's totally different. So this is a Mongolia charity rally.
Gotcha. Very cool.
And of course, so we were not only doing rallies, but we were doing our own little road trips and camping trips as well, other than Scandinavia and these rallies. So we didn't just do these organized rallies. I've done a lot of road trips with friends, a lot. Like in Europe, I think Europe is fantastic to do road trips. Not necessarily, at least not the western part, for off-roading or remote backcountry camping, because there are too many people for that in Europe. It's too crowded for that. Eastern part, you can do it. Southern part, yeah. But for road trips and maybe stay in organized campsites, yeah, it's beautiful.
So you finished the Africa trip / rally.
Yep.
And then you went back home to prepare for the big...
Not really.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, we went back home.
We went back home for like a week.
Yeah, for a week. But after that, we flew to Asia.
Southeast Asia.
Yeah, Southeast Asia, to Vietnam to spend a month there, and also to Bali. To spend a month there.
Yeah, so we've spent a month in each in Saigon and in Bali, and we just spent 2 months in Asia, and then we flew back. So this is another thing I wouldn't necessarily do again this way.
Sure.
Because we flew back from Asia, so we spent like a month and a half in Africa, then 2 months in Asia, just flying there, and then we flew back to Europe, and then started the trip. But that meant it was a very hectic preparation, because we got back and let's upgrade the drawer system. Let's buy this. Let's order that. It's not going to arrive. We can't buy that. So I wouldn't do it this way anymore.
Okay.
But we were like, okay, we have 2 months. We're not working. Let's do something that doesn't involve sitting at home. So we flew to Asia.
Nice.
Yeah. It was fun. It was good.
Yeah. What were the highlights of the trip? You were backpacking, I imagine.
We actually worked.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we actually worked online. So I was setting up the website. Evelin was also starting her freelancer career, I guess.
Exactly. I tried to build a web shop, the dropshipping web shop, but after that I just realized that how much I love the advertisement part of marketing. So I specialize myself in Facebook and Instagram advertising, and also in Google advertising. So yeah, we went to Singapore, and after Singapore, I just started to work as a freelancer, basically. But the 2 months that we spent in Southeast Asia, it was a very good time for me to learn a lot of things about online marketing. So
interesting.
I really appreciated that time. And also we met amazing people there, and we just, you just get inspired by other people.
Because we stayed in this really cool co-working space. We worked in a co-working space in Bali. Like, you have a pool and the beach is like 200 meters away, but you're working all day. So we were thinking, okay, we're going to spend this 2 months between the two trips, Africa trip and the Asian trip, with work. We're trying to sort of establish ourselves working online, but let's not do it in Europe or Budapest. So we flew to Asia, and it was like, so it sounds a bit, I don't know.
Wonderful.
Yes, but it sounds a bit like, oh, that's just a bit too extravagant to fly to Asia to work or something. It was actually cheaper to stay there for those 2 months than staying at home.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a lifestyle. So digital nomads live in Southeast Asia and work from there. Yeah, it's just a very cool lifestyle.
Nice.
Yeah. How did you transition from your what I imagine was a full-time job to being a freelancer?
Yeah, so I always hated this 9-to-5 job, but I really loved marketing, and I was always working in online marketing. Yeah, I hated this office lifestyle. So I was really relieved when we just decided, okay, let's quit our job. Then I have a year to figure out what am I gonna do with my life? And I was 26 or 27 by then, so I was quite young. So I just realized
you're still young.
Yeah, okay, that I still have time to figure it out. And Southeast Asia, it just happened, when I realized that what am I gonna focus when we done with this Singapore trip. And when we got back home, I was still a little bit confused, and I went job interviews, and I stepped in the building and in the office. I looked around me, and the people were so depressed and so exhausted, and I just decided, no, I can't do that anymore. So I went back home after my first job interview. I registered myself on Upwork, because that's a freelancer platform and you can find jobs there. And I was just really focused to find an online job there. So that's where I got my first client, and the other clients just came by recommendations.
That's so powerful. word of mouth. Like you have one client do a really, really good job. They will recommend you to a bunch of other people who will recommend you to other people. And that's, I think, even with social media and email and all of that, it seems like word of mouth is still super powerful. Yeah. And what were you doing?
So I'm a lawyer, and I work for investment companies in London, and I've done that remotely from Budapest most of the time, but I spent a lot of time in London as well before. And I liked a lot of parts of my job, at least initially I used to, but I mostly liked the whole environment with, like, I worked with very smart people, I worked with like challenging tasks and everything, but after a while it just got to be too difficult for what I, like, compared to what I want to do, like, be outdoors, spend more time with travel. And this was like very strict corporate environment that I didn't like anymore, even though I was very lucky to work remotely pre-pandemic world.
Right.
I was working for like 7 years from my own apartment for a boss that was 1,000 miles away. And that was, again, still like, it still got to a level and I'm like, okay, I went to Mongolia with my mates. I know I want to get out of this job, and finally we quit in 2017, but it's very hard. So I guess because I don't dislike all of the parts of my job, but it gives me the opportunity to do this right now, it's very hard to get away from it. But I did 3 times, but that means I went back 3 times. So this is what's happening now. Like I quit my, well, it's not, I say job and it's really a job, but I also have my clients because I work as a consultant, and it also goes through recommendation. But it's just a very official, very strict world working for these big companies. And it's just, I want this, like, you look outside and there's a river there. It doesn't involve that. What I'm trying to do is set up my own online business and like do my own things online as well. So I'm in the process of doing that, but chances are I will just go back and work for another, like do another 6-month project, maybe 12-month project, and then we're off to the Antarctica again. I don't know. I find that this is a very frequent question when you talk to people, especially people who are not overlanding or not long-term. Like, how can you afford it? How do you do it? And the main answer that we have usually is we don't buy stuff. We don't buy the latest phones. We don't buy new clothes. We don't buy new cars. We don't have a car loan, especially if somebody is asking, who's paying for like a $700 monthly car loan and asking us like, how can you do this? How can you afford this? I'm like, there's your answer. I mean, but if that's your preference to drive a brand new truck, but then not travel, like maybe you cannot have both. Some people can. We wouldn't be able to pay for a car loan and a mortgage and everything else and then do this. So we decided this is our preference.
Making a priority, and then there are always sacrifices or decisions that you have to make.
Yeah.
And it's just, as I said, like we're driving the same truck that we drove to Singapore. A lot of people would have bought, to be fair, I would have bought a separate, with my mindset now, I would have bought a separate truck for that trip and then sell it later.
So now looking back, you said that you would actually, in an ideal world, prefer to have one purpose-built vehicle for overlanding and then a separate one for a daily driver. What about that vehicle that was built for both do you feel like should have been changed? I
still love that truck. I love that. It's the Toyota Land Cruiser 120 Prado. It's really great. It's a great truck. And if you're doing like 2 weeks overland trips, maybe a weekend trip, maybe like shorter trips, my answer would still be the same as in like, use your daily driver, put a rooftop tent on top or sleep inside. Just do that. But if you're going on a 6 month plus long trip, have a purposely made overland truck because your life's going to be easier and better on the road. Like, for example, with the Prado, I wish we had like a pop-top roof where we could have stood up inside, and if the weather was bad, we could have made a tea or brush out teeth inside, something like that. We were always outside, and the fact that we went through Central Asia and the Himalayas or part of the Himalayas, big mountain ranges, bad weather. If you're doing everything outside, it's not as comfortable if you just have your daily driver with a rooftop tent. And also another thing is, even though it's a very capable truck, I would have probably bought a stronger one, maybe higher lift or bigger tires, more recovery equipment. I think we were, again, this is a balance, how much money you want to spend and how much weight you want to take. And I think weight is equally important as money in these terms. And like a winch or high lift jack or things like that. If you have a small car, which the 120 Prado relatively is a small one, you got to decide whether you take a big tool that you may or may not need over a trip like that. So long trips, have a purposely built one. shorter trips, use a daily driver.
Yeah, but also it was a good idea to show the people that you don't have fancy cars. So if you have a family car, you can just upgrade it, go wherever you want for an overland trip. Yeah, so you don't
you can do
fancy cars or fancy vans, but as you can see on the road, so it was a good opportunity to show the people that the fact that you can have a family car and you can upgrade it. It actually inspired my friend who have a Toyota Corolla. Is it?
Like a 15-year-old Corolla.
Yes, a very small car. And Ferenc just inspired them with this drawer system in the back, so they built their own and they could sleep inside in that small car. And they went to Croatia and also to Slovenia last year, and also this year they're gonna do that again until they find their, I don't know, dream van, which is a transporter, T4 or T3. I can't remember that. But yeah, we just inspired our friends and it's so cool.
This content is brought to you by Overland Journal, our premium quality print publication. The magazine was founded in 2006 with the goal of providing independent equipment and vehicle reviews, along with the most stunning adventures and photography. We care deeply about the countries and cultures we visit and share our experiences freely with our readers. We also have zero advertorial policy and do not accept any advertiser compensation for our reviews. By subscribing to Overland Journal, you're helping to support our employee-owned and veteran-owned publication. Your support also provides resources and funding for content like you are watching or listening to right now. You can subscribe directly on our website at overlandjournal.com.
Speaking of inspiring and vans, so you guys did this trip from, was it Budapest to Singapore?
Yep.
In the Prado.
Yep.
And you learned a lot about that. You, like many, many other people that I've chatted with, had the experience in that vehicle, and then the inside living space for longer trips becomes more important.
Yep.
And so what did you choose and why?
I mean, my ideal dream truck was always the 70 series Troopy Land Cruiser. But then by the time so that would have been ideal for Budapest-Singapore trip, and we met lots of really well-built 70 series on that trip, and I was like always just jealous. But then by the time we got back and we were thinking of, okay, how permanent are we going to work online and how long and all those kind of things. And for that, a roof conversion, like a pop-top roof, if that's how you call it, right? Mm-hmm. Those are great, but not enough, not big enough for permanent living inside, which we had plans for. So we wanted a 4x4 van. We wanted to stick with 4-wheel drive because that last part of the trip that you want to take to get to the most beautiful places, you need 4-wheel drive or high ground clearance and all that. So we're looking at all the options. We were looking at what kind of vans can we buy, what can we afford, what is on the market. And luckily in Europe, there is a truck maker called Iveco, which what we're sitting in right now, which is a major brand. It's not known in North America, but it's a major truck maker in Europe. And they have this Mercedes Sprinter sized van that they're making, 2 diff locks, low range gearbox, 4-wheel drive, high ground clearance, everything that you need. So we're looking for that for 2 years because we weren't in a rush, because then obviously COVID hit and we were like, okay, let's do this, let's find one. But then COVID just made buying these vehicles more difficult because everybody found out about this kind of travel style. And there was a couple of vans that we looked at. These are all used vans, obviously, that we looked at, about 20 years old vans. We looked at younger ones as well, but then the price just goes through the roof. There was like 2 or 3 that we were just not quick enough to buy because other people bought it. And this we're talking about a couple of days that they went up on a like an advertisement site. And then suddenly this came up. We just bought it without even seeing it. Just like transfer the money straight away. Talk to the guy in Germany, just like, can I send you the money now? And then I think the next day I sent it. I've seen pictures and I've spoke to the owner, transfer the money, no negotiations, nothing. I'm like, how much are you asking? Yeah, here you go. And I think 3 weeks later we drove there with my dad and picked it up. Of course, there was many that we didn't like. So many that by that time we learned what we want. Like we want a table inside, we want to sleep inside, we want to be able to stand up inside, have a little sink and a fridge. Like that was like the kind of the basics that we wanted. And this had everything of that and a bit more. Like it had solar panels already. It had a tougher suspension.
So it was used for travel before you purchased it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the owner, like 2 owners prior to me, built the truck, and he was a mechanic who wanted to travel the world. And unfortunately, he had a paragliding accident, so he couldn't use a standard anymore. He had to buy an automatic. So he had to sell this and sold it to the family whom I bought it from. And the family sold it because they had their second kid on the way. So it's too small for that. But I think talking of the size of the van, it's perfect size because it's short wheelbase, very high ground clearance as a base, and it's got the low range gearbox and diff locks. So the engine is the weak point in a way that it's it's lacking power, like very much. It's like 102 horsepower for a 4-ton vehicle. The actual standard gearbox is the gears are set up in a way that it's compensating for the lack of power.
Gotcha.
Plus, we have the low range, so it can go anywhere, but slowly and loudly.
What would you change about it, or are you happy with pretty much everything in terms of?
A lot.
We changed a lot on it. Like the main build was there, and then we added a few bits. Like we changed the box on the front, we changed the LED light, we changed we set up our Wi-Fi kind of router. The inverter there was no inverter, so I have a really good quality inverter. I've got a Victron 800 watt inverter installed. We made it, I think, a little bit nicer inside.
Yeah, so I put this white foil on the on the furniture, so it looks more modern. Mm-hmm. And also we changed the curtains, drapes, and also the cushions. So my dad helped a lot because he's like really into DIY. He loves DIY, so he made the cushions and he helped with various bits around where it's like, hammering and using a screwdriver involved. So we've done a bit. And also recovery, we got all our recovery gear from ARB. We got a nice awning outside. So there's these little things, little changes that we just customize it for our needs, but the main build was there.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's very well laid out. And this area, the dinette folds down into a bed, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Nice.
And under this sitting area, we have a lot of storage. So it's just really comfortable. And I know that I mentioned you before in another interview that I really like these boxes to organize everything. So we bought some boxes in the IKEA, put our clothes in it. And also we have some plastic organizers in that cupboard. So we could organize our food, our clothes, our gears, accessories, everything. So it's quite.
And obviously we've been in bigger builds and nicer big expedition trucks and everything. So we see how comfortable can a truck be. And then of course, when we are here inside and we cannot go outside because of the weather or whatever, or it's in the evening and we are inside already, and we sort of scramble around because the space is too small. But then you kind of okay with the small space because we compare it to the Prado. Like we would be outside now. We would be or sitting in the tent, like on the roof. So compared to that, this is luxury, really. And the fact that I can stand up is just a big fact.
So I'm going to go back a little bit, and I want to talk about your Budapest to Singapore trip. Which countries did you go through, and how long was it?
So it was 6 months total, and we went through Romania, Bulgaria, Turkey, Georgia, Russia, Kazakhstan, Russia again a bit, and Mongolia, China, Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore.
Wow. That's a lot of countries.
No, that was spot on.
Okay.
That's great.
What were your strongest impressions about certain regions or places along the way on that trip? Because you saw a lot, obviously. There's a lot of countries to go through.
It's a lot of countries in 6 months as well. So other than the Prado, I would change the length of the trip in terms of time. So it would probably a year would have been better for that distance. I've been to Mongolia before the trip, and I keep mentioning Mongolia to you guys, but it's a fantastic place for overlanders, I think. I don't know you, but China made a huge impression, especially that we were on the western part, not the eastern part. So we would say like less developed than the western part, but it was still massively developed. We came through cities. I came across cities with 5-6 million people you'd never heard of.
Wow.
At least I haven't heard of. And roads are really well built. Cities are massive. People are extremely nice. And food is out of this world. It's just so good.
Best. Yeah. The food.
Yeah.
And you had to hire a guide, and you was it shared 1 or 2 guides with a couple of other?
No, there was only one guide at the time. So we had 2 guides, but split into first 2 weeks and then first 3 weeks and the second 3 weeks. It was 43 days in total. So you have to have a guide, yes. If you're driving through China with your own vehicle, the guide is sitting in one of the vehicles, which is sometimes ours. Sometimes we were 3 cars in our convoy. Super nice experience. Both of the guides were really nice, Shang and Brenda. I mean, I guess you don't know what to expect when you go to a totally different culture, and somebody you've never met before is going to sit with you for thousands of miles or kilometers with you.
Right.
And it was fantastic. Like, we could have a lot of questions we could ask. Like, we had a nice chat. We got to know them very well. Yeah. Really great.
And they speak very good English.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What were some things that you learned about that country from the guide that you wouldn't have
a lot.
been able to learn?
Yeah,
about?
I mean,
almost everything. And you cannot communicate with the people, there, because they don't speak English. You don't speak Chinese, obviously. So yeah, and you cannot communicate non-verbally because that's different there. So you need a guide. But we had a very nice experience. The people were so friendly with us, and we also got some presents from the people there. Yeah, because we tried to avoid the big cities, so we went through the rural area, but just Ferenc mentioned, so the western part of China. And sometimes we just stopped at a small village, on the basketball field, and the whole village just turned up, and they were watching us cooking our meals for dinner, and they were just asking, why don't they eat rice for dinner, for example, because we were making Italian pasta. Yeah, and they were taking some photos and videos of me, how I cut the onions, because that was so strange for them. I don't know, maybe they have another technique for that, but that was really interesting.
The whole village turned up, whole village, and 50 mobile phones just pointed at us and taking pictures and videos. And
we have a paparazzi photo of that, so yeah.
Like everywhere you go as an overlander, you stand out because you tend to end up in small villages and remote places. And I guess that's a little bit even more extreme in China, because no overlanders go through, really, compared to the scale of the country and compared to how much it has to offer. But I guess this guide requirement makes it difficult both financially and makes it more complicated as well. Or at least people think it's complicated, but if you find the right company to help you find the right guide, then it's not that difficult. You have to provide a lot of documents.
Right. I was going to ask you, how did you find a good guide or guides? And then also, how did you link up with the other 2 travelers or 2 vehicles? I'm not sure.
Yeah, 3 travelers in 2 vehicles, and online, of course. So first of all, Facebook groups like the Asia Overland group, I think, or maybe the China Overland group. I cannot remember, one or the other. There were recommendations there before, and also just Googling it. And then we made a list in like an Excel sheet, and then just, put all the data into the Excel sheet. And then actually, I didn't do that. Nils, who we were traveling with, was very organized and done it, who just collected all the information we had. And we had like monthly calls with, so first of all, we hooked up with our future traveler partners, also online through the Facebook group And we started chatting. We created our own little Skype group and just started chatting who wants what. Initially, it was like 5 vehicles together, and then 2 vehicles dropped off because of different timing or different preferences. I don't know now, but it was 3 cars eventually, and we had monthly calls. And it took us about 3 months at least to decide which out of the 6 or 7 companies we listed, which one to go for. And we were like we went for the ones that were one that seemed to be more accommodating than the others, in terms of like, we want a wild camp, we want to go this route and that route, and we want to do this length. Price obviously was discovered considered. This is how we decided. We ended up with, I think it's called adventure-china.com. And Shang is a really great guy. He's managing the company. Yeah, I can send it to anybody if anybody's asking. But yeah, it's possible to find it in the Facebook groups, like through recommendations. And we also met other travelers through, everybody ends up in Laos, or most people ends up in Laos after China from Mongolia, or if people do it, obviously the other way around. But from Europe, you end up in Laos, and you meet a lot of other people who were going through China at the same time, but obviously on other routes with other companies. And some of them were complaining that they didn't get what they wanted. They didn't actually go through those routes that they agreed to, or, those kind of things. And we didn't have a single issue or problem. And our group worked really well as well. So other groups, it's, again, you are sort of locked in for 40 odd days with other travelers. Many, many times that works out. Sometimes it doesn't. Ours was just like a dream team.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It was really good.
That's wonderful.
So did you plan out the entire route and plan out where you wanted to camp or which villages you wanted to go, and then gave it to the guide, or did they have some input?
Roughly the provinces.
Okay.
So only the provinces.
And you can choose your own adventure, sort of.
Sort of, you can, yeah. And then if you want to go through Tibet province, that's an additional few permits and stuff.
Gotcha.
Spending so much time with the guide, were there things that you learned about China, like politically, or just what the life is like for the local people, or anything food related that was particularly interesting?
Everything.
Yeah. So things like, again, these things spread among travelers or future travelers, like, oh, you have to have a guide in China. He must be a spy who will then report on you to the government in some ways. And it's like, it's total BS. It's not.
I didn't even think about that.
No, that's what we actually asked. So, are you reporting? It was a joke by then, because we got to know we became really good friends by then. But so we could actually ask these kind of silly questions.
And he laughed. So that was a good sign.
And he said no, he wasn't. but then so things like that. And also when we went through the smaller very tiny villages, but in like the Tibetan culture areas, he told us a lot of information about how they live and what they do and how they bury their dead, or how, for example, food. We were all really interested in food because it was fantastic. I've been to a lot of Chinese places around the world, a lot, but it's not the same. I don't know why, but it's...
What were these dishes you were having?
I don't know the names. I mean, a lot of them were vegetable-based.
Okay.
Yeah,
food, plant-based.
My favorite was the pak choy, and I'm so happy that in Canada I can buy pak choy anywhere. Anywhere. So we always have some pak choys in our fridge, so that was my favorite. And also broccoli with some mushrooms in oyster sauce. That was another famous Chinese dish. Eggs with some tomatoes, and they put it on pasta and also on the top of the rice, so you can eat it with pasta or rice, whatever you like. So these were my favorites. And also we ate Beijing duck.
Like the smallest place is like just on the side of the road. Let's say we drove for 3 hours and it's lunchtime, and we are in the mountains somewhere. There's not even a village, just like a shack. You can go inside and order, and it doesn't even look clean or anything. Then we would order. The food was fantastic. Every single time we stopped in one of these dodgy places, I was obsessed with food there. So I was at lunch, I was waiting for dinner, and dinner for lunch.
Yeah, and sometimes the owner of the restaurant allowed me to go back to the kitchen and have a look at the fridge and just decide what we would like to eat. I mean, we could pick our vegetables and our meat. Yeah, but thanks to our guides, because she and he was really kind to us, and they just wanted to make sure that we have a very good time in China. So they always asked the owners of the restaurants that we could go, to the kitchen and have a look around and to decide what we would like to eat.
What a cool experience.
Yeah, and also they were really open-minded about white camping, because what we heard from other groups, that the guide was really strict about camping, so they couldn't camp, or they had to go to touristic hotels, so they spent a fortune on the hotels. Yeah, but our guides just are
took their own.
They're amazing. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, they had their own tent with them, so they we camped all together in really like the Tibetan plateau or a similar area. We were lucky to go through the remote, for us it seemed remote parts of China. Yeah.
What were some cultural experiences that you had that changed the way that you see the world? Anywhere in that whole trip. It doesn't have to be China. It could be anything.
Very, very deep question. I have to think. I have to think about it. But I think it's more like in general. Like, for example, how careful we need to be with our resources. And it's so that's not necessarily a cultural thing. But on the other hand, we see now waste everywhere. Like we went through China. Not China, but like the whole of Asia. And it's not just there. But talking of this trip, there's garbage everywhere, and the beaches are in a really bad shape. So it was an eye-opening kind of a trip, I guess, to how careful we need to be with this planet right now, because it could be too late. And it's a cliche, because this comes from everywhere now, TV, radio, whatever, podcasts, whatever you're reading, it's all about that now, and people may get bored of this, but it's so true. It's so true. So that's yeah, I mean, again, another thing is that we learned is that we, maybe now talking of cultures, the local people are always really nice, and maybe on a bigger scale of things, politics ruins everything. And that could be true for Iran. We went through Iran in 2014. The most fantastic people in the world are Iranians, or went through places where I think generally people wouldn't choose as a travel destination necessarily, like Kazakhstan. We met fantastic people in Kazakhstan. They are very, very welcoming. And just in general, how local people live wherever you go. Like where you go very far, people go to, like kids go to school, people go to work, parents pick them up, and life goes on. And maybe they are half as rich as the Western world, but life is normal. Life is totally fine. I think that's something that we learned. Or like parts of Southeast Asia, they used to be poor. Now it's kind of very developed. Thailand and Malaysia and places like that. Just talking about generally about resources and stuff, you learn how to be resourceful with water very much, or electricity actually. Because do you run out of electricity, or your battery is going to last until the morning, or your food's going to go off because the fridge stops working, or you run out of water and you cannot drink in the morning, things like that, and you're just careful.
And back home, I think we're used to turning the tap on.
And take it for granted.
And definitely. Yeah. And so you're rewiring your brain. Use only what you have because you don't know when.
And it was funny. We met a Canadian girl who, they were with the whole family. They were traveling all the way to Malaysia and then back with a camper van. And she said she went back because we met them like a year later as well. In Europe. So she said she went back to the office to work, same job she went back to, and then she was standing around in the office kitchen or whatever, and somebody was opening the fridge and then talking to her and just like leaving the fridge open, and she closed the fridge because she got annoyed with the fridge being open. Yeah, because you're really careful with like you got a small fridge and it's running off of the batteries, and you don't want to lose the coldness of the fridge.
Yes.
Just careful. I remember closing the faucet on somebody else, like we had it running water. I'm like, you're not using that.
Yeah.
I remember coming back and doing dishes by hand with hot water, and it being like this big deal. And I would be obsessed with washing dishes from then on. And people are like, just put it in the dishwasher. I'm like, but I have hot water and soap. This is so amazing. Like, it was weird, but yeah, it changes you. What was the most hilarious thing that happened during your Budapest to Singapore trip?
There was a few funny things happened.
Yeah, so we met a Russian family in Kazakhstan next to a campsite, and we were just decided to park close to the buildings there. They were like weekend cottages. One of the Russian family invited us to their cottage to have a dinner together, but we cannot speak Russian, and they couldn't speak English. So we had a whole night together, having a really good time together, but we were speaking via the Google Translator all night. Yeah, it was fantastic. And also in Mongolia, we went through a national park, and there was a really, really flooded area. So we just decided, let's take a turn.
Go around it, like we tried.
Yeah.
The field next to it looked better than the road. which is like a track, really. It's not a road.
Yeah, and it turned out it was horse poo. the whole area.
Yeah, the whole area.
And we just sank. Really.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the whole truck just like just sat in the whole puddle of horse manure. We stepped out of the car and we sank until like mid-thighs. And
I lost my flip-flops there, and they are still there.
yeah. So it was pretty difficult to recover the truck from there, but we were covered in crap, really. And we didn't know what to do. It took us like 2 hours until the first Land Cruiser that was big enough to pull us out arrived. So we were sitting there, not in a level way, and we're like, how are we gonna even sleep here if we are covered in this thing, and what are we gonna do now?
Yeah.
Obviously, you end up in situations like this, and it always resolves itself somehow. I think the most hilarious story that we have from that trip, and it's not our story, but we heard it from the person that happened with this girl who was riding her motorcycle from Switzerland to Mongolia, and she stopped in some dodgy motel in Kazakhstan, and there was this person knocking on her door during the night. And then when she opened the door, there was this guy standing with a gun, and when the guy sees her, he says, "Oh, sorry, wrong door."
Oh no.
And he asked her out the next day.
What?
Yeah. So
For a date.
it was,
You guys are now in Canada with your Iveco.
Yep.
And so you finished up your Singapore trip, and then what, did you have a few years at home?
we went to Australia.
Just for a wedding.
Yeah. No, we had this little road trip in Australia. It wasn't necessarily an overlanding trip, but it was a massive, it was a longish road trip on the east coast of Australia, and it was connected. The main purpose of going there was actually a very good friend of mine's wedding, and then we've done obviously a little 2-3 weeks trip there, and then I think that was the last trip since, like, after that the world has changed. So
Yes, the world has changed.
we've done that, and then we already knew, like, let's buy a van, come back to Australia, or let's bring our Prado back to Australia, or something like that. But then obviously all those plans went out the window, and then we are here now because now we can travel again.
Right. I was going to say, so you have this van and you shipped from Germany to Halifax in Canada.
Yep.
How did you decide that the Pan American Highway was next for you?
We wanted something as big as the Budapest-Singapore trip, and then there's 2 options. We either drive through Africa or we do the Pan American. And the Pan American, obviously, we've done a bit of Africa already, so let's do something else. Mm-hmm. So that's how we ended up doing the Pan American. And I think it's bigger as well, like in terms of like length, and I don't know. I've been to South America before, and I just know I want to go back. So I want to do that. And I've never been to Central America. And Evelin's never been on the American continent.
Yeah,
so it's always like the scale was tipping towards the Americas. We are really overwhelmed with what we've seen in the last 4 weeks already. So I don't know what this next year and 5 months brings, if that's how long it's going to be. I don't know.
So you've come from the Maritimes in Canada across the country.
Yeah.
And you're actually getting close to the western side. So you've made it almost all the way across, actually. You've never been to North America before?
No, never.
What is it like? Like, did you have preconceived notions of what it would be like here? Are there weird things that you're like, why is this like this? What's surprising?
It may sound silly, but I just told Ferenc that everything is like in the movies. You know, this big milk in the supermarket. And this
just little details seemed very funny or strange to Evelin. Yeah,
and also the scenery, these proper campsites. They are just like in the movies. So for me, it's just wonderful. Yeah,
nice.
I love Canada, especially the people here. They are so friendly. They are really, I don't know, chatty with us. They are really friendly and always ask us, how do we feel ourselves here? Do we have a good time here? They also invite us to their field to stay there. I mean, to their garden or to their house to stay there. Yeah. So, and they are very helpful as well. So
I'm glad to hear that as a Canadian. I'm always like, oh, I hope they're having a good time.
No, brilliant. Yeah, really
That's
good.
great. So you're going to head up to...
So we're near Banff now. We're going to head to Alaska, towards Alaska, and we're going to discover northwestern side of Canada as well, bit of Alaska. Now we know we're probably not going to go to Tuk, which is fine, I think. I think the only reason why we would have gone to, or the main reason we would have gone to Tuk is just to be able to say that we went to the northern coast. So we can say that we went to the Arctic. We're going to go north enough, I think. And it's not, the point is not to be able to say something important, is to have enjoy our trip and discover whatever we want to discover. And we're going to go into Alaska, and then we turn around and start heading south. And I spent a bit of time on the east coast of the US, but never been on the west coast or on the western side. So that's going to be really great. And going into the southwest of the US, really looking forward to that. And I've never been south of the US in Central America, only to South America. So
there are one of two questions that I usually ask on every podcast. And in this one, I'm going to ask you, if you could choose any country in the whole world to go to right now, where would you go and why?
You go first.
Oh, it's hard to choose. I would say Chile, because I have never been there, but I saw some pictures on the internet, and I also heard stories from other overlanders that it's just a beautiful country, so diverse. I'm really looking forward to see it in person. Yeah, I would say Chile, but also Peru. Oh. So it's hard to choose, really.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had these 20 seconds to think about it, but I don't have a good answer because there's too many options. There's too many. I mean, I guess the reason why we're here, because this was our choice to be here. So that's why we're here. I mean, right now, I don't want to be anywhere else. I want to see what's, north of here. I want to see what's there. But then, we were looking we went through the plans of where we can go, and based on your advice, where we could be in Central and South America and all those places. And I said, I cannot wait to be around there, but then I don't want to wish this trip away in terms of okay, that place can wait, and we see what's here and
be in the moment, but soak it all in, because you never know when you're going to be back.
Then people are going to ask which part was the highlight of the trip, and I won't have an answer for that, because I don't have an answer for the Budapest-Singapore trip either, or the Budapest-Africa trip, or I just cannot choose, because there are too many good places to see. And I think we've seen a big part of the planet, but still very little. Yeah. There's still too much to see.
If people want to find you online, where should they go? I know your website is very, very thorough and has a lot of resources, and a lot of time has been put into it. So let us know where we can find you.
Yeah, the website is overlandsite.com, as in SITE, overlandsite.com. And of course the Instagram, which is overlandsite_com. And we're trying to build a YouTube channel now. We have a lot of footage from our earlier trips as well that I just never had the energy to edit together or create the stories, which I will, I promise. But right now we're building or creating the videos about this trip. So pretty much as we go, pretty much live.
Same name for the YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much for being guests on the Overland Journal podcast. I so appreciate you sharing your experiences and all the funny things that happen, your goals and everything. So thank you for having me as a guest in your Iveco. We're really excited to follow your journey south.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really.
Thank you so much to all of the Overland Journal listeners and subscribers for tuning into this episode. And we will catch you next time.
Bye.